Hello, welcome to stream. We're about to begin. Oh, it's hot. We said we were going to do this a few hours ago, but couple had to do some other stuff. So now we're at it. Better late than never. So we got 3 pages. So you're watching Leckety Leck Leck's set review, Moons of Elsweyr, The Elder Scrolls Legends, Episode 5. In Episode 1 we did Neutral, Multicolor, and Endurance, I believe. In Episode 2 we did Agility, Episode 3 Willpower, Episode 4 Intelligence, and now we're Episode 5. So the way we're going to approach each card, we actually didn't talk much about arena use cases. We've only been talking really about constructed in the previous episodes. We haven't been playing arena. So that's a disclaimer that we're talking mainly about constructed. But we'll be talking about cards from their worst case scenario, middle case scenario, like middling case, the average value, and the best case scenario. When we're talking about consume cards, we'll be talking about them in relationship with other consume cards that we might see some synergies. And when it comes to wax and wane cards, we'll talk about them in conjunction with Moongate over here and Rebellion General. Pretty much those dictate the card value. Okay. Devouring Flame, action 2. 2-drop. Deal 2 damage to creature. If this would kill it, instead banish it. So it costs twice as much as Firebolt. So you're paying 1 Magicka to deal 2 damage and 1 Magicka to banish your target. My concern with this is that in the decks that you would actually want to banish things, typically they have too many targets that you want to banish. So like, let's say this. 1 Magicka to deal 2 damage is Firebolt, so that's good. But the extra 1 Magicka to banish it, I'm a little bit suspicious of, because against some decks, banishing it has no relevancy. Let's say you're against Battle Mage, Prophecy Battle Mage. Well, if you banish it, you're just overpaying, because do they have any recursion? Do they have any sort of synergies bringing things back from the grave? I am afraid not. So in some cases, you're just overpaying 100% value, price. And against the decks that you do want to banish it, like Scout, Ebonheart, card decks that sort of have the ability to bring back stuff, or consume decks, I feel like they have too many targets. A single target banish is not enough. Like Piercing Twilight is a better tech choice because it banishes all copies of a specific card, for example. And Memory Wraith, just banish everything. Those cards, I think the banish ability is effective largely because their net is wider. So I think in Devouring Flame's worst case scenario, you're basically shooting something down like a Prophecy Battle Mage card, and you're basically overpaying. In the average case scenario, you're actually banishing it against a target that you want to banish, maybe a Parthenax or whatnot. But unfortunately, they have tons of different other targets to bring back. Like let's say you banished a Old Velothi Assassin, like, sure, or you banished a Rack and Venom Tongue on my Ebonheart deck. Well, my deck is full of cards to bring back. You could banish 1 Thieves Guild Recruit, you could banish 1 Merchant's Camel, but there's going to be another one. So, I love Solitaire, and I'm not really afraid to see this card. Now, the best case scenario, when is it absolutely worth it? I guess also an average case scenario is you banished the it's really weird because like imagine banishing a Flame Atronach A Flame Matronach has 3 HP, so if you wanted to banish the Flame Matronach so they can't use Elsweyr Conjure, even that use case is hard because you'd actually have to deal 1 damage with a rapid shot, which feels bad. That's 3 Magicka and 2 cards. So the best case scenario, what's the absolute best case scenario? This is actually forcing me to take a creative approach because I'm struggling to see it. I am afraid the best case scenario, like the really sad part is the best case scenario is you're banishing the Flame Matronach and it has 1 damage on it, whether it's Skaven Pyromancer or a rapid shot. At that point, I think you should just put in a Channeled Storm in your deck or Reverberating Strike. There's a lot of options that would do that, but if you banish that target, that's a very meaningful banish in the current meta. The card art's cool. Fear Totem. 2 Magicka action. Prophecy. Unsummon a creature and reduce its cost by 3. I think this card is really good. I can't even begin to think of all the use cases of this card. I've seen it in Prophecy Battle Mage. I've seen it in combo decks. We saw it in last weekend's tournament, used by Stealer of Secrets deck. It was used in a Stealer of Secrets deck. That made it to that won the tournament this past Warp meta. Basically, you can use it aggressively and you can use it defensively. It's cheap enough and good enough to be played from hand, and it's also good enough to be played as a Prophecy. As a Prophecy, it can be pretty meaningful. Let's talk about an example of a good target is Corner Club Gambler. If someone uses a Corner Club Gambler, they discard a card. You unsummon it. They don't draw cards. They have to play. They get it played again for free, but they have to discard another card, and they lose a lot of tempo. So it's a very strong tempo-oriented card, especially if both decks are in a race. It can remove a big guard that they are that was put there to set up lethal. It can be used on your own cards, like a Breton Conjurer. Let's say you're a Breton Conjurer, you rapid shotted it, or it's already lost its ward. You could unsummon it and bring it back, and play it for 1 Magicka. So you should kind of like recycle the value of a card's summon ability potentially. I think this is a combo piece that could also fit in combo decks. So it can be in those aggressive decks trying to remove wards. It can be guards. It can be in a mid-range deck trying to just generate tempo. You probably don't need many cards of it. Maybe just a 1 of just to remove that drain creature, that guard. And in control decks, it has potential. Like it can be in the. It can be seen as like soft removal. Kind of like basically. Imagine using Fear Totem on a card like Corner Club Gambler, and then now you know Corner Club Gambler's coming down and setting up your Ice Storm to be a little bit nicer. So the deck that won in the finals was a Guildsworn Stealer of Secrets, so they had access to Ice Storm, Channel Storms, Dawn's Wrath, that kind of cards. And in combo-oriented decks, I'm not exactly aware of what combo decks would use this, but there's a lot that could be used in this because it's recycling the summons of something, of a card. I believe that if you unsummon a 2-drop, it will still be 0 cost. You won't get +1 Magicka, because that would be that would make it a combo crazy piece. It would start generating Magicka. Alright, worst case scenario. I think the worst case scenario is this card is actually played against. Okay, what's the worst case scenario? First of all, it's in hand. The worst case scenario is that it's from hand, so you have to pay 2 Magicka. Worst case scenario is your opponent is a control deck, and all the creatures they have have summon abilities, and all your creatures don't synergize with it. So I think this worst case scenario could be sort of mitigated by, say, let's say your opponent doesn't have anything to unsummon. If you're going to run this card, you would also want a use case where it can be effective used on your own creatures, so that regardless of matchup, Fear Totem is valuable. So that's basically Fear Totem's worst case scenario is when you unsummon your opponent's creatures, it helps them more than it hurts them. And like, let's say they only have like Thieves Guilds recruits and Eclipse Baronesses and stuff like that, and you're not running creatures that benefit from Fear Totem, it's kind of a waste of magicka and a waste of a card slot. Average case, middle case scenario. So in the average case scenario where it's cracked off from a rune prophecy, it's probably going to be useful. Unfortunately, the worst case scenario is that they broke a rune and the prophecy triggered and all their creatures already attacked. So it's not going to, it doesn't save you as much damage. Like, if they had a creature that hadn't attacked yet and Fear Totem was triggered and then you unsummon that creature that hasn't attacked, that would help a lot, right? But in this case, imagine they attacked with 3-cost creatures, they crack the prophecy, and you send it back, but the cost of the creature is like a young mammoth. So you send back a young mammoth, and then they just like play it immediately right after the Fear Totem is done. So like, prophecy, Fear Totems gets cracked, but the young mammoth's already attacked, and then they unsummon the young mammoth, and they can play it back for free. That's kind of also a bad worst case scenario too, I guess. That's kind of worst case scenario kind of stuff, but that's a middle case too. Best or better is if it hadn't attacked yet. So I guess it's a little awkward from that point of view. Another average case scenario is sort of like you're trying to set up your own cards. You maybe have a Thieves Guild recruit and you Fear Totem it back so you can just like play it twice, maybe? Is that good? You play 2, and 4 magicka you play 2, then you draw a card. Could be a cycling card. It could be played on a Breton Conjurer kind of flat out. You just put the Breton Conjurer down, you attack, and then you unsummon it later, and then you bring it back down to just generate more Ice Atronachs. I guess you could use Fear Totems on Alfiks. You could also use Fear Totem offensively on their Alfiks and also defensively, I guess. You could send it on your own thing after it attacks and then replay it if you have enough magicka to do that. I don't think you'd do that if you don't have enough magicka, but I'm just saying, later down the line, you attack with the Alfik and you have random extra magicka. Fear Totem your own Alfik and summon another Alfik and another Storm Atronach. Maybe that's something useful. So best case scenario is this card's played. So if it's played as a prophecy, it can still be used on your own creatures. It doesn't need to be used on your opponent's creature. So let's say there's a creature you want to unsummon, and they hit the prophecy, you want to unsummon your own creature and play it again. That might not be a very smart idea, considering if they're breaking runes at that point, you probably need cards to defend yourself. But that's a possibility. You could also use it to defend yourself, like we just mentioned. Probably if on a creature that hasn't attacked yet. Basically, just make it lose one attack. But again, I think Shrieking Harpy would be better in that use case because it develops a threat as well. The only time Fear Totem might be better is when you already have Shrieking Harpies. Or you can't play Shrieking Harpies, or you actually have a combo oriented with it. And if you know of a combo with Fear Totem that I've not mentioned, feel free to let me know. Hello. Hi, TYTBLOL. Okay, thanks for the clarification, Milk Sensha. I think this card could be a good surprise. Like, a Dark Seducer is another best case scenario. It's like your opponent throws a Dark Seducer and you have lethal on the board and you just remove it with a Fear Totem. So this card becomes effectively, another best case scenario from an aggressive point of view is when this card actually, they're not able to make any use of the reduced cost. Basically, let's say this card is the game-winning card. Like, if you played Fear Totem on a Dark Seducer and you have lethal in front of the Dark Seducer, sure, it reduces it by 3, but if you have lethal and you end the game right there, they can't make use of that boon or that benefit, right? Because it does have a downside on this card, reducing the cost by 3 if used aggressively. That could also be used as a... it could be actually seen as a plus side, though, when you're using it on your own cards, right? Because if it's 2 Magicka and you reduce another card by 3 Magicka, you're basically making the other card cost less by 1. Because Fear Totem's 2 Magicka, right? So if the other one's like... So this one costs you 2, but then you get 3 back on the other one. So basically, you get to play the other card for 1 Magicka less, basically. So if you had a Breton Conjure on the ground, you used Fear Totem on the Breton Conjure, the Breton Conjure's cost is 1, which means the Breton Conjure is only costing you 3 Magicka to replay with the ward. Flexible card. I'm not fully aware, again, of all the combos, but if you're interested in the finals, I don't know where the deck... I think it's on Reddit, but our winner ran 3 copies of this card, so it must be something. Prowl Smuggler. 2 Magicka, Khajiit, 3/2, Pilfer, equip a steel dagger to a friendly creature. During the Master Series, I don't know how to call it. During the Master Series final event, Prowl Smuggler showed up in many people's decks. Surprisingly to me. So, 2 Magicka, Prowl Smuggler, Khajiit, 3/2, Pilfer, equip a steel dagger to a friendly creature. Steel dagger is +1/0. It's basically 1 Magicka worth of item. It's the same item that you get from a Crown Quartermaster. One of the top 8 contenders brought this card in a Battle Mage deck and brought 0 Alfie Conjurers. One finalist, Boom's Life, ran this in the Dagoth deck, in his Dagoth deck. I don't remember if he has a Battle Mage deck, but I do know this was in his Dagoth deck. So let's look at the competition for a second of what are 2 drops in red. Why are people running this card? So Circle Initiate, 2/2. Or Clan Captain. Okay. So when you look at the 2 drops, it's actually apparent. I actually can see why. It's actually fairly attractive. So Circle Initiate is actually straight up worse. It's straight worse if played on curve. If this card's played on turn 2 and you haven't broken a rune yet, a 2/2 is going to be always worse than a 3/2. Right? So this is a card that you want to see in opening hand. And that's actually Circle Initiate's sort of awkward part. This is a card you don't want to see in opening hand. It's a prophecy, and it's also it needs to have beast form to be above average value. Orc Clan Captain has the same problem. If it's found in opening hand, it's objectively worse than a 3/2 by 50% because its attack is 1 point less than this. Like 1 point isn't a big deal because 1 is 50% of 2. So like this is the attack of 3/2 is a lot more. It's a lot more damage than Orc Clan Captain, and the other friendly creatures in this lane, played on curve, is only relevant if there's any other creatures on the board. And sometimes there's only 1 other creature on the board, so it's only giving you +1/0 anyway, which effectively means this was a 3/2. Now this has the upside of its Pilfer ability, which can keep getting more and more value. Basically, if it attacks, it usually can get its first attack in, okay? If it gets its attack in, and if there's another creature that will kill it the next turn, you can just give the Steel Dagger to your another card you played and buff that card. Or if this card looks like it's safe, you can put it on itself. So it's versatile in that regard. If you were to compare it to Protector of the Innocent, the Protector of the Innocent is a very good card as well. The stat line's the same. Now you could say Guard's always better, but that's not true. Sometimes Guard's not better because you're just trying to go in the shadow lane and murder people. You're trying to go underneath them. So Guard basically makes it possible for your opponents to trade into you, and you're no longer safe in the shadow lane, so that's a problem. And then Prophecy's relevant in the aggro matchup, but in certain aggressive lists, you may prefer a card like this simply because, Protector of the Innocent's better if it came off Prophecy, right? But if they're both played as 2 drops, Prophecy is not relevant. Prophecy is only relevant if it triggers. Otherwise, it's not. It doesn't do anything, right? So if this card is played from hand, it's a 3/2 with guard basically, and the guard is backfiring against you if you're trying to hide in the shadow lane. So Prowl Smuggler is better than that in that regard as well. This Prowl Smuggler is also better than these cards, and actually could probably be synergized with it. Imagine this: Rahad Horseman gets +0/+0 when equipped with an item. This could give an item to Rahad Horseman very easily. But the idea is this is straight up worse than this as well for 2 reasons. It needs an item to be able to be stronger, so it has a conditional. And on top of that, if it does not meet that condition, it doesn't have ongoing value generation. This card, unanswered, can equip 2/3 steel daggers, which basically is double damage. So I think when you just look at the competition, Prowl Smuggler is indeed worthy of it being included in aggressive decks. In decks that are probably a little bit not so all in on the aggression plan, Protector of the Innocent might be more appropriate. But since we live in the Alfiq meta, certain decks just want to put Alfiq decks on a clock. So like some of those Alfiq decks are actually kind of slow. So if your deck is aimed at killing people on turn 6 and their win condition is mid-range and sort of we're going to kill you starting turn 6, that's where this card will fit in nicely, maybe in a Crusader deck. So this is also, let's talk about worst case, middle case, and best case scenario. So worst case scenario is you play this as a 2-drop and it eats a Firebolt. But it can't die to execute. Orc Clan Captain, 5th Legion Trainers are all executable. 5th Legion Trainers saved from Firebolt. This card has a useful and relevant ability, basically getting stronger and stronger and stronger, adding more attack on the board. That's always relevant if you're on an aggression plan. So it has an ability that it has a useful ability, but it's such a low-costed card that people are unlikely to silence it. Earthbone Spinner wouldn't kill it. So if it was like a 3/1 or a 4/1 or something like that, it would be tremendously more vulnerable to Halalu Sharpshooters and Earthbone Spinners. But since it's a 3/2, people may not feel comfortable using that card on that. It's immune to Skaven Pyromancer, basically, because like it doesn't die immediately from one hit. So I think the worst case scenario is you play it as a 2-drop and it gets removed. So we think about what removes it. We're thinking about Ice Storm, thinking about Debilitate, so this is debilitation food. But those are all cards that cost more than this. Firebolt's the only one that I can think of that costs less. And then Channeled Storm, Crushing Blow, all these cards are 50% more expensive than the Prowl Smuggler. And the way I view it is if you play a 2-drop and they kill it with a 3-drop, you're actually winning. You're gaining a Magicka advantage. So if you keep on playing a 1-drop, they answer with a 2-drop. You keep on playing a 2-drop, they answer with a 3-drop. They're using more and more expensive solutions, so you're probably getting more and more damage in. So that is one way of viewing Prowl Smuggler's worst case scenario. He just gets removed. I think the worst case scenario is you don't find him on curve. I mean, you don't find him on turn 1 with the ring, or you don't find him on turn 2. He's not in your opening hand, but he's not in your opener. And then you end up finding him later on when you wish that you were top decking something meaningful, at which point they've already got Hive Defenders, they've already got Phalanx Exemplars, and they've got Ice Storms, where they can basically take out many of your cards with a single card. So it's like you have a Prowl Smuggler and let's say you lost field lane, they have Hive Defender there, and you found Prowl Smuggler in turn 5 and you put it in the shadow lane alongside other cards like an injured Mournhold Trader or whatnot, and then they just Cradle Crush you and that's game. I think that's where Prowl Smuggler really struggles. It struggles into the mid game basically. So I wouldn't recommend it. I would not recommend this card being put like. Well, I think it's good. I wouldn't recommend this card for a deck that's not comfortable winning the game by turn 6. Like, it's possible to win games by turn 6. Like, if you watched my Dominion deck, it's winning the game by turn 6 to 8, around that range. And Prowl Smuggler's fitting in even faster it wants to be even faster than that, right? So if you're going to be even faster than that, so you're relying on speed, you're basically saying, look, this deck is really good, it's really fast, it probably has its very bad matchups, like Guildsworn will probably spank your deck if you're too fast, because you're going to run out of cards, and they're going to like annihilate you, and they're going to drain, they're going to have prophecies. So you have to like pick and choose, right? By putting this card or too many cards similar to it, you become more and more vulnerable to certain decks, but you also become stronger against certain decks. I think the matchup this deck card would most like to see is aggro versus aggro. You find this deck in a deck that is going against another aggressive deck, so you don't worry about, in aggro versus aggro, if it's a racing situation, you don't worry about card draw. You just worry about killing them before they kill you, because your opponent's going to break runes and give you cards. When you're against control decks like Guildsworn Rage, there's a lot of things to be worried about, because you are basically go face, and they have 20 prophecies in the deck, and there's like so many prophecies that they could hit that would immediately swing the game. Like a Golden Initiate, a healing creature. Imagine you like break the rune, you have this Shadow Lane stack, it's like turn 7, so then it's going to be turn 8. You break the rune, Golden Initiate comes down, he puts in the Shadow Lane, you've already used all your Magicka, your attack's already in, and you're like, oh, he's going to use Rage. It's his turn, he uses Unstoppable Rage, gains 12 life, kills your whole board, game's over. So, middle case scenario, I think, is this card is found on curve. It's found on curve, found on time, and I think he is able to get in 1 or 2 pilfers. I think that's his average life cycle. I'm pretty sure he can get his first pilfer in by being in the Shadow Lane if it's early days. Sure, he can be stopped by things like Fighter's Guild Recruit. That's probably like one of the cards that would stop this card. And being red, you may not be running Archer. I think Karakhan Zul ran an Archer aggro deck where he ran Prowl Smuggler, I believe, in the finals, but I believe everyone banned it because they didn't practice against it. Since they didn't practice against that kind of deck, they just don't want to worry about it, because it maybe it has some maybe it's very fast, right? Too fast. And what I'm saying is the Archer decks could move this card. So the Archer deck could say, they have a Fighter's Guild Recruit, we move their Fighter's Guild Recruit stuck there, and we're just going to pilfer. And I think, let's say he gets the first attack in, he deals 3 damage. He puts the dagger on himself. The second attack he does 4 damage. He did 7 damage in 2 attacks. That's very aggressive. 7 damage. Let's say now he's at 5. So like let's just say he just first attack he got 3, second attack he got 4, third attack he got 5. So that's 12 damage. So if he gets 3 attacks in, it's 12 damage, which is a lot. So I think it's above average for him to get 3 attacks in. 2 attacks is more than enough value. If he can get 2 attacks in, it's great. If he gets 1 attack in, that's normal. I'm trying to think of combat tricks that would help him out a little bit. Like, some decks use Cloud Resolutions and Shining Saints sort of to help their cards survive, or movement to keep this guy going. But in red specifically, I don't think there's that many such tools, so you're going to rely on the other colors that you're using to help him out. So if, like, I can think of a sort of Candlehearth Brawler, maybe like coming up, because you could play this on turn 1, right? And they don't answer it, he attacks again, and then you play another threat in another lane. You probably want to split lanes when you're playing this card, that way that they have to chase you down. So you don't want to play, this is not a card that says, we want to control a lane. This is a card that says we're just attacking them in the face, and if you're going to send a guy to answer him, well, don't worry, because I'm putting steel daggers on the other guy on the other lane, so sure, you might kill the Prowl Smuggler, but now we've created value that's kind of carryover onto the second threat. So the best case scenario with this card is I think he gets 3 attacks in. If you get 3 attacks in, and they equip it to itself, and probably the final attack, it's probably equipping it to another body, because at that point I can't imagine it not dying. So like the first 2 attacks, it can equip it to itself or potentially to another target, but the third attack, if it actually got it in, it would probably not equip it to itself, because at that stage unless the opponent has like not played anything and has no cards, there's no way that they haven't played something that has 2 attack that could trade into it, at least in my thinking. And that's probably the beauty of this card, is that it has, if you think about it, if it attacked 3 times, it actually reproduced itself. The base attack of this Prowl Smuggler is 3. The first attack, it is 1 steel dagger, second, third. Third attack is 3 steel daggers. 3 steel daggers represents 3 attacks. So even if he died, if he got 3 attacks in, he now lives on in the form of steel daggers, basically. So, good card. Use with caution. Euraxian Berserker. 3 drop. Imperial, 2/4, summon, consume a creature to gain +2/+0. I 2/4. Okay. So the first problem with this card, let's say worst case, middle case, and best case. Worst case scenario is there's nothing to consume it. You have nothing to consume, and you're gonna have to play suboptimal. So you have an opening hand, and you'd rather have had another 3 drop in your hand, basically, because there's nothing dead yet. So this is if it's played without you will never play this. I don't think you'd ever play it without triggering the consume. You'd rather wait, and you'd rather be Magicka inefficient and play something else. That's what I would imagine. The middle case scenario is you consume just any, I would say. Let's also talk about the worst case scenario. I think another worst case scenario is you play it as a 3 drop. You do consume a card, but you just consume any card. You don't consume any card with special consumable ability. And one of those cards that says, if you consume me, get this bonus. So if you just consume a random card, it's a 4/4 for 3. That, if silenced, becomes a 2/4, which could be relevant because a number of players, especially defensive players like Guildsworn, they like to run Earthbound Spinners. So if you're hiding this card in the shadow lane, they might Earthbound Spinner it to remove the cover, and you'd become a 2/4, and then you're easy trading for maybe another card already in the lane. So they're getting +2/+0 is kind of a liability in the sense that it could be silenced and removed. Although, if it's silenced or removed, that's another target that's not being silenced. Alright, so if it's a 4/4, it's basically a young mammoth without breakthrough. At which point, I would rather just put a Corner Club Gambler or an On-Die Clan Sorcerer in the deck. Because On-Die Clan Sorcerer and Corner Clubs are 4/3s, and they're both 4/3s, but they have lots of tremendous upside. But 4 toughness means you're still vulnerable to Channeled Storm, 1 empowered per trigger. You're still vulnerable to Lightning Bolt, okay. Card's not valuable enough to get javelined, so people javelining it are kind of like in desperation mode, or they just have nothing better to do with their turn. So I don't think it's kind of like it's a little bit lackluster as a 3 drop for an aggressive deck, 4/4, without making any good use of the consume. So when I say you're not synergizing anything. Now let's say the best case scenario is you start consuming something that has a benefit. So like, let's take Ill-Fated Scholar for example. I lost today to a guy who had this card in their deck. Ill-Fated Scholar, if he's consumed, summon a 3/2 spirit. So one way of looking at that is if you somehow manage to get that in the grave, your Euraxian Berserker becomes a 4/4 and you get a 3/2. So basically you play 3 Magicka to get 7/6 worth of stats. That's called value. That's called above average value for 3 Magicka. So that's the kind of plays you're trying to look to make with your Euraxian Berserker. Crocodile Brute's also another card, so then it becomes Euraxian Berserker, 3 drop, 4/4, consume a creature and draw a card. That makes it above average. which actually makes it better than Corner Club Gambler, because a Corner Club Gambler discards a card to draw 2, which actually means you only draw 1 if it resolves. You only draw, it's like draw 1 if you never discarded a card. But your Axiom Berserker draws you the card right off the top. So I think that's worth noting that if you're consuming cards just like these two, you're starting to play the card the way it was meant to be. Now, there are other consumable cards called Imbued. Like, for example, this Minotaur. I think this Minotaur right here, we didn't talk about it, is probably the best target. They're native colors. This is a 5/2. If it's consumed, give the consuming creature +1/+1 breakthrough. So this could be a 3-drop, 5/5, or 5/5 with breakthrough. At which point, it's better than a Bleak Coast Troll, because a Bleak Coast Troll is 4 Magicka. So, running cards like Imbued Minotaur, Ill-Fated, and Crocodile Brute enable your Axiom Berserker to get above average value for a 3-drop. Now, to actually... Now there is a problem with that. It's actually like, how are you getting these cards in the grave? Like, this is a 3-drop and this is a 3-drop, which means that, sure, you're above average. Let's pretend you ate an Imbued Minotaur. You're above average value for a 3-drop. But that card's also a 3-drop, which means, like, what turn are you actually looking to have your Axiom Berserker? So, like, let's say Imbued Minotaur's played turn 3 and he dies before it's your turn, so that's turn 4. Wow, you have your Axiom Berserker, I eat it, and now I'm a 5/5, but you float 1 play point. Float 1 play point means you have 1 play point unused. Why not just play Bleak Coast Troll, which has no setup required? It's like off the shelf, good to go. Best in class. So there is that sort of problem. I think the only color so far that can consistently get things in the grave is Seeker of the Black Arts with basic endurance. This card says pilfer, discard the top 3 cards of your deck, meaning if you have lots of these cards don't need to be played from hand, and they're actually discarded so that since that's a 2 Magicka play point card, Seeker, this will actually be an enabler for your Axiom Berserker. So you don't need to play Ill-Fated Scholar, wait for it to die, then consume it. You can just play said Seeker of the Black Arts, pilfer, discard, hopefully these goodies, play this card, eat those cards, get above average value. Ruin Shambler is another way to do it, although this is more expensive. Just discard the top 3 cards of your deck. This is actually the card that killed me. I think of all the consume cards. Okay, when I say of all the consume cards that are meant for those consume specific decks, excluding Alfie Conjurer, Ruin Shambler is definitely the card to be looking out for. This is the dangerous card. This is the sort of rebellion general for consume, basically. So it requires setup, and I do feel like there's a little bit more RNG than I'm exactly comfortable with if you don't run purple. Like, if you're running red and you're basically somehow doing these Ill-Fated Scholars without purple, we are hoping for things to line up. You're hoping that those cards are played in order. You're hoping for them. You are hoping to get the Imbued Minotaur before the Axiom Berserker, basically. So Warrior might have the best, most consistent way and the most effective way to make use of all these things. Also, Imbued Argonian is actually quite good. As a 1/3 1-drop with guard, when it gets consumed, your Axiom Berserker could then become a 5/5 with guard. I think that is pretty annoying. Okay, so that's the best case scenario, I would say, is when you're able to line those all up. Imbued Minotaur. Stranger music. So Imbued Minotaur. 3-drop Minotaur, 5/2, breakthrough. When Imbued Minotaur is consumed, give the consuming creature +1/+1 and breakthrough. I think this is a really good card. Its stat line is unusually aggressive, which is just what you want in a very aggressive deck. Sometimes you don't even care about toughness at all. You just need to get as much damage as possible. And then the breakthrough itself is pretty relevant. I think breakthrough is probably one of the more important keywords for an aggressive list. Breakthrough is what you don't want when you're defensive, because you're accidentally going to break runes, but it's exactly what you do need when you need to get past small guards. So if they put like a small guard in front of this, a 2-attack guard, like 2/2 guard, at least Imbued Minotaur's 3 damage will chip in. Can add up. So I think it's actually worth playing as a 3-drop 5/2 breakthrough without any consume synergy whatsoever. We're going to verify that by looking at the other 3 drops and see what are the competition for 3 drops. So Blighted Elite was used in many aggressive lists as 5/3, so we're better than everything else except for Blighted Elite. Craven Conscript's quite good, 5/4. So, but that has the Shackle ability, and then Dagoth Oathman averages value, gets 4/4, but it can become a 5/5. It's pretty stronger. Mighty Ally goes to 6/3 with Breakthrough, especially in Pure Red. Mournhold Trader 6/2. So I think okay. So the cards that Imbued Minotaur is actually worse than. They're stacked. Red has a lot of good 3-drops. So I think this card. Oh, hold on 1 second. So I think Imbued Minotaur's average value is it's above the majority of cards, but it's definitely got tough competition in the 3-drop sector. There's a lot of other, like Witherhand Cultist is in there, Dagoth Oathman's in there. So when you're talking about 3-drops, when you look at a deck, you need to make sure you're not putting too many of one drop, right? Like, so if you look at this deck, right, there's 24 3-drops in this deck. There's like 9 1-drops, 19 2-drops, 24 3-drops. It's a little stacked on the 3-drops. So if your deck is too stacked on the 3-drops, you can be accidentally weakening your deck. So just be careful when you're dealing with 3-drops that you're not putting too many. Like, look at the ratio between 1-drops, 2-drops, 3-drops, and 4-drops, etc. And then you have to make a decision. And when you're thinking about an Imbued Minotaur into your deck, you have to be like, would I rather have this 3-drop or would I rather have this 3-drop? Like, 5/2, this card breaks a rune every single time it attacks if there's no guard, because a rune breaks every 5. So this card has no respect for runes. So that could be an issue if you think that's an issue. But because it's a breakthrough creature, it actually has a place maybe even in a Guildsworn Rage deck, because Imbued Minotaur and Rage is only 11 magicka, getting 5 damage to completely wipe out a lane. Maybe I could even run it in my Ebonheart Slay deck. I have my Ebonheart deck, and 5/3 seems kind of to pair with a Rage seems kind of good. Already those decks are going out of their way to find funky ways to get breakthrough onto creatures with 5 attack or more, using things like Guildsworn Oathmans to generate improvised weapons, or even including improvised weapons themselves. So I think this card just needs to be compared, and you need to ask yourself, is this deck going to be better off with this 3-drop or this 3-drop? How many 3-drops do we have? Now, the consume synergies make it kind of interesting, because since it's good enough for a non-consume deck, you can totally ignore the consume and just be, okay, it's good enough. But when we start talking consume, what are we looking to consume? So right off the bat, it doesn't look like there's what consumes it in red. So Uraxian Berserker is the first thing that consumes it, and Rage Dragonite consumes it. Okay, so these two, I think a Rage Dragonite's quite good and quite playable. So those two cards go well. So it's nice to know that this card's already good. So Imbued Minotaur's good and Rage Dragonite's good. So pretty much those are the only two options. Consume a creature, Battle Mage. I mean, Midnight Trespasser's pretty good, so if that consumes it, that's pretty good. Blackworm Neophyte has interesting synergies. I actually don't believe that I talked about the fact that it could consume a Territorial Viper, because that was played against me. It can consume Territorial Vipers and summon basically another Territorial Viper. It's an Odurnian Necromancer, 2 Magicka less. Although it has the downside of it has the downside of accidentally consuming the Viper. So I actually won a game today where my opponent used this, and he was hoping to Territorial Viper one of my 12 attack Barrowstalker, and then he realized, oh, I consumed the Territorial Viper, so there's nothing else in the grave for me to bring back. So Skeletal Mage could do it. Skeletal Mage we gave Skeletal Mage a lot of grief. We can just type in the word consume. What are we doing? Mercenary Captain. Mercenary Captain could be with it, although this is a little bit more go wide strategy. Please note that all these cards that have Consume and Wax and Wane will become much more stronger with each new Wax and Wane or each new Consume card. That's the nature. Like, for example, if they just start releasing more cards with consume that can consume, Imbued Minotaur's value will start to become more attractive, especially if it's accessed in red. I do think we should be... It's a little unlikely. For some reason, like, the previous developer of Elder Scrolls Legend had a bad track record of supporting new keywords. So I would like to see consume and like in the future that maybe a card or two, a consume card or a veteran card are released, sort of support these archetypes that have interesting mechanics, but they might need a little bit more support to really become top tier. So the worst case scenario, I think, is this card breaks a prophecy and the prophecy kills it, because he's the 5 damage just and you don't have any consume synergies. So that's kind of good because it has breakthrough and because it's kind of cheap costed. If you found it on curve, it's basically representing damage that gets to the face. It could get Channeled Storm, so it is vulnerable. I think the average case scenario is that you're going to get the damage in, but I don't think it's going to live more than once because of its very weak toughness. Turn 3, turn up. There are already 2 drops that have 2 damage, right? 2 attack. So it's likely to get damage, but it's likely to die as well. Above average, so the kind of best case scenario is he gets 2 attacks in. Like if this guy gets 2 attacks in, your opponent's at 20 life. And no prophecies trigger. So it's a very straightforward card. This guy, you play him in a lane, you attack them, hope there's no prophecies, and then if they don't kill it, you attack them again. Now in those consume heavy lists, +1/+1 and breakthrough, I think it's a good option because let's say you're not able to find your Ill-Fated Scholars or Crocodile Brutes. Well, your Uraxian Berserker eating Imbued Minotaur or any other of your consume cards eating it, it's good enough. It's better. It makes the card that consumes it automatically better. So that's good carryover. Whether or not the consume variants of Warrior are actually better than non-consume variants is yet to be seen. I forgot also this card, Dromathra Reaper synergizes well with it because this consumes a card. So this card consumes that card. It becomes a 3/3 by itself. You gain 1 life, and then it becomes a 4/4 with breakthrough as a 2-drop. Not bad, not bad. So I'd imagine if you're running a warrior consume deck, you'd run 3 of these, 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 and 3 of these, and then 3 of these. And 3 Dragon Knights. So I think it's okay. But there's the thing about this deck can be high rolly. It can get above average value by finding basically ill-fated scholars. That's what you really want to find. But I think it's also somewhat, it's kind of one-dimensional. This deck is very aggressive. It's go face, and it can't change its game plan. There's no alternate game plan other than go face. And that leads to the question is, when you compare that game plan with other decks that also go face, is it better? I think at the moment people don't think so. It probably isn't at the moment, because if you played those warrior colors, so like the problem is if you played warrior colors and you played those cards, you don't have access to Alfie Conjurer, and if you don't have access to Alfie Conjurer, you're kind of at a disadvantage when dealing with those Battle Mage and other blue decks, like my Dominion deck. My Dominion deck would have an edge on you because we have a variety of sort of win cons. We can vary our pacing. We can change it up. We have heals, right? The warrior list as a consume list would need to be a warrior deck, I think, because the consume deck cards, in order to synergize with each other, they need to find each other. And if you deal with a 75 card list like Covenant, the consume cards are going to be diluted and they're not going to have a high chance of finding each other. Like when you use the Shambler, you're not going to find, the top 3 cards will probably not be consumed. Consume synergies. So by kicking out blue, you're also kicking out like things like guards. When I say like alternate win strategies, like Dominion right now, my Dominion could like, as an aggro deck, it could basically say, hey, we're on defense mode now, we're going to guard and we're going to control the board. I don't think that these consume cards are very well optimized to contest the board. Like they're basically trying to hide in the shadow line and keep going face with every single attack, because they don't have things like Cloud Resolutionist or other combat tricks that sort of help them gain advantage. Riemann Siege works. Weapons. 3-drop support. At the start of your turn, each friendly creature deals 1 damage to your opponent. I've seen people try to use this as a pilfer synergy. Basically, every time you deal damage to your opponent, it counts as a pilfer charge. Like, for example, if I played Parthenax and I used the shout that says Dragon Aspect, battle that creature, it actually activates pilfer for your opponent. So like if your opponent's pilfer ability is draw 2 cards, if you use Dragon Aspect on that card, it'll kill it, but it'll also draw them 2 cards. So Riemann Siege Weapons basically, I think it's looking to have pilfer strategy. So if you have those 1-drop Bandari Opportunists, that would be an additional trigger for the Riemann Siege Weapons. So there might be a deck where there's Riemann Siege Weapons and Undying. The other one that's talking about Unrelenting Siege. Unrelenting Siege says 1 attack creatures can attack twice. So they're kind of similar. They're kind of expensive as supports. Unrelenting Siege is very expensive for what it does, but Riemann Siege Weapons is a little bit cheaper. It's making it a little bit more playable. Every time you pilfer, so like you say you have the green creature 2/2 pilfer, +1/+1. If it gets a charge off this, it'll get +1/+1 from it. I think the 1 damage itself is not that relevant, and people aren't hating on support removal as much right now. But certain deck archetypes have crazy support removal, so that's the risk. Like if you were to run this deck against Guildsworn, you're gonna get Dushnicked for sure, basically. So that's the downside on this. This is like support. I imagine a deck that runs Riemann Siege Weapons actually uses it to win. So if you remove it, their win condition probably starts to disappear. Because if this card's put in the deck, it needs to have high impact and it needs to have enough synergy where that it can win the game. But if you're relying that much on this card, then if it gets removed or it's not found, then you're in serious trouble. I think Archer is the most natural deck archetype to use this, is because they have lots of pilfer creatures, and Bandari Opportunist seems like a card that would enjoy this kind of card. This card also might work with Crusader, sort of go wide strategies, lots of tokens. In that case, it's a double damage. Like if you're, it could be a one of card or even a 2 of in a Crusader list. I think 1 of might be more appropriate. A 1 of that you're running sort of the Mercenary Captain package, 5th Legion trainers, marked mans, and you're just going super, super wide. And the Remnant Siege weapons just acts as a double damage on all the cards. But in that capacity, it seems a little unnecessary. So it could be put in there, but it's not necessary. That deck already has a lot of global buffs like Divine Fervor. And Divine Fervor might be more appropriate than Remnant Siege weapons, because Remnant Siege weapons cost less. It's not like Remnant Siege weapons does anything for you if you have no cards on the board. So if you have nothing on the board, Remnant Siege weapons literally will do nothing for you. So Divine Fervor is similar, but Divine Fervor, since it's 5 Magicka, it curves nicely because you've had turns 1 through 4 to develop a board, and now find immediate value from Divine Fervor. One moment, please. So the worst case scenario of this card is that there's no creatures on the board to actually take advantage of it. Also, this card breaks runes. If you had enough cards to take advantage of it, it'll actually break runes before you had a chance to attack, thereby opening you up to the possibility of prophecies disrupting your attack. Its competition comes from cards like Divine Fervor, and I feel like Divine Fervor is... It's interesting because, in a way, Remnant Siege weapons does the same thing as Divine Fervor, dealing 1 damage, but it doesn't facilitate good trading, and it doesn't help with board control, because +1/+1 can be used to have favorable value trades. It also, the 1 toughness can protect you from ice storms and whatnot, so Remnant Siege weapons loses this kind of ability. So I feel like Divine Fervor is better from a stat point of view and like just controlling the board, but Remnant Siege weapons' main use is to be pilfering, because since it triggers the pilfers, this can be very powerful with certain cards that have pilfer, like Sails Through Storm. If she has this, would basically pull a free card from your deck, and then hopefully be able to do it again with her actual attack. I think the average case scenario is actually you build a small board with this, and your opponent... Oh, the other worst case scenario, they just remove it. They play it, they just remove it, and your win condition's gone. The The average case scenario is you play this, you do have a board, and it probably gets you something like 3 to 6 damage in. It could probably get you 3 to 6 damage in as a 3 drop if you had a board that they struggled to deal with. So I think that in certain decks that could be worth it, because like a lightning bolt's 4 magicka, right? So theoretically, if Riemann siege weapons did 4 damage, just 4 damage to them, it was actually doing better than a lightning bolt, because lightning bolt is 1 magicka per damage, and since this is cheaper, doing 4 damage for 3 magicka makes you better than 4 magicka for 4 damage. So I think your hope is that your Riemann siege weapons does more than 4 damage. If it does more than 4 damage, then the card is not just good, it is great. It's actually hurting them in a significant amount. In some matchups, probably this is a very good card, especially some decks can't even remove supports, like Assassin. But the real question is, if you were playing this in an aggressive go-wide deck, whether it's Crusader or Archer, could you outrace your opponent in the aggro versus aggro matchup? And if you're a go-wide strategy, if you're against the control decks, if your board gets wiped out, what do you do? Do you instantly lose? Because this card synergizes probably with the smaller creatures that are more vulnerable to by board wipes, basically. The smaller the creatures are, like Scouting Patrol, for example, would go well with this. 1 magicka, 2 1/1s. Is that 2 magicka? I don't know. Oh, that card's a crazy good. Scouting Patrol is 1 magicka? Okay, so that Scouting Patrol and this card are excellent for each other, because Scouting Patrol can help Riemann siege weapon easily get the damage above 4. Unfortunately for you, when I said that it can be better than Lightning Bolt, your creatures actually need to survive 1 turn. Their opponent has 1 turn to react and if you play this card, you don't get damage in immediately. It has to wait for your next turn. So your opponent can remove your board, debilitate it, etc., etc., at which point Riemann siege weapons flops. So the best case scenario is your opponent can't remove this, you have a wide board, and it starts to net damage above 4, 5, 6, at which point, if they couldn't even deal with your wide board, it's kind of like an accelerator that deals double damage. And hopefully some of those small cards have Pilfer, meaning they're getting stronger and stronger with each turn, and it gets out of control. Definitely a card that I think has potential. It just needs to be used carefully, because it's not... I'm most worried about the aggro versus aggro matchup, because if you're developing this while they're developing a young mammoth, that's where you have problems. It's like on curve, how many things do you possibly have on the board? So if it's like aggro versus aggro, you're in trouble. Control versus aggro, this card is vulnerable. The decks that synergize with it is clearly vulnerable to board wipes. So I think this deck is a high-risk strategy. It's a high-risk, high-reward kind of tactic. I'll be right back. Okay, it looks like we're gonna need to take a small break, but we'll be back. We'll be back in a little bit. We're just gonna leave the stream on, but we'll be back. I just need to do something. But we're gonna put a BRB sign here. Intermission. It's like, let's edit our little... Thanks for being patient. I'm happy you guys tuned in, and they'll be on YouTube, so you can totally skip this part. Just know that we do the set review in sequential order. So if you're interested in any specific card, let's say you're not interested in any of these cards, but you're interested in this card, our thoughts on this card, you can just skip and figure, oh, he's on this part, so it's probably a little bit further down, I'm going to be on this part, etc. Because there are a lot more cards to go through, so I'm going to need like maybe 10 minutes or so. So totally feel free to go away or go do something else, and if you feel like tuning in, tune in. To answer what's with the deck names, I think deck names are good. Okay, let's keep going. Dominator 4 is dominating. 38 wins, 10 losses. That's my best deck. That's my best deck. So, to break it down for you, 6M means the highest rank we were at was rank 6 in the morning with that deck. So we're at rank 7 now. So this deck got a 6M, actually. I believe it was the afternoon. Or no, it says the morning. It was morning. No, I was 6 in both afternoon and morning. Don't worry about it. But A would be afternoon. Dominator, I think choosing a name that's memorable and inspirational that makes you smile. Like I look at this like, Dominator 4. It helps me differentiate between myself, my own decks. 4 Roman numerals indicates what generation this deck is in, because there's been a 3 and a 2 and a 1. It's like Red Death 10. Usually the names are funny to me, or they make me smile because of something. Like Red Death is a reference to another video game. But we'll be back with our set review later. If you're wondering what game that is, it was a game in Warcraft 3. It was a mod, custom maps called Tides of Blood. It was a precursor to Dota. So it was like it was an Aeon of Strife game, and one of the heroes' titles was named Red Death, and I thought that was a really cool card. Cool. It wasn't a card. It was a cool. It was a cool hero you could be. All right, we'll BRB. To answer your question, the answer to that question is yes. Stop by just to check. But the answer to that question, whether the time of day affects what decks are good, I think the answer is yes. Because different time zones have different people playing, different people play differently, different regions play differently. And like, okay, just an example, if it's really, really late at night, some people don't want to play, or sorry, late at night for me, people like playing control decks. Early in the morning, people like playing aggro decks. That's what I noticed. Okay, we're back. How's everybody? Thanks for watching. Hopefully you were able to hear that response milk Shensha. So Enraged Dragon Knight. 4 cost, Imperial. 5/4, summon, consume a creature to deal 2 damage to each player. I think this card is a good card. Let's check the competition. When you're considering cards, you always want to check the competition and see what else can you get for 4 Magic. 9/1. Bongler, sure. Let's go. Hit and run. Draw 5. I wonder if there's any way to cheat hit and run. Oh. Wow. What if I ran this in my Ebonheart Slay deck as a 1-of? And literally played all 5 cards. That's actually really interesting, like a ramp deck. So red seems to be blessed with quite a few good 4-drops. But so Orc's 6/5, he stands out as the best so far from a stat point of view. 5/4, 4/5. Okay, so when we look at the 4-drop slots, I think Enraged Dragon Knight is like a red Bleak Coast Troll. He's good enough. She is good enough. 5/4. The 5 is more relevant than 4, but if we could buff it to 5/5 or more, it'd be nice because you get out of lightning bolt range, and then you only become vulnerable to hard removal like javelins or lethal pings. So first of all, we want to say that Prophecy Battle Mage likes this card because it deals damage to themselves, so they can crack runes. That's the kind of deck that takes advantage of the fact that you deal 2 damage to each player. So 2 damage is to burn them, and 2 damage is to burn yourself. The damage burning yourself can crack a rune and break out a prophecy, along with other cards that hurt yourself, self-targeting cards. So I think 4 Magicka for 5 attack and 5/5 is best in class. So 4 Magicka for 5/4, no abilities is already okay, but the ability here of doing damage to the opponent is relevant because now if Enraged Dragon Knight gets 1 attack in, she's done 7 damage to the opponent, which I believe is above average. I think a card like this is average life cycle is 1 turn, so it's really important that you get more damage in from an ability and not just the attack, because realistically expecting this thing to attack multiple times and survive is probably not going to happen. It can happen, so I think worst case scenario is you play this card as a 4 card, 4 drop, and it deals 2 damage to each player. It doesn't crack a prophecy for you because you haven't done enough damage to yourself, and your opponent and it cracks a prophecy for them, and lightning bolt comes off from there and kills it. That's the worst case scenario. Another worst kind of case scenario is when this card just gets played and the opponent just removes it with a lightning bolt or a channeled storm or a javelin. In the channeled storm case, you feel bad because they used a card that costs less. Lightning bolt, it's break even 4 Magicka for 4 Magicka. For javelin, you feel like, okay, well, that's 1 javelin down. You can count how many javelins they have left. On top of that, if they removed it, this card at least burned them for 2 damage. So in that case, if this card was hard removed, it's better than a Bleak Coast Troll, because a Bleak Coast Troll would have also got removed, but it would not have done any damage to the opponent. So I think it's playable even if Consume is not taken advantage of. Again, it's similar to Imbued Minotaur, where the stats are good. It's good. Its ability is good. This card was also run in the Master Series as well. So people identified it as tournament worthy. Although I would like to say I don't think Thuldir did. So Thuldir is the champion of the 2019's champion. I don't think he used this card at all. Now, the middle case scenario is you don't consume anything really relevant. By the time it's turn 4, you'll have something to consume, I think, because you're an aggro deck, so you probably ran other cards. Because it deals damage to both players, I can't see it used in any other use case other than an aggressive deck. And it's towards the top of the deck's curve. So like a deck that has a bunch of 1 drops, 2 drops, 3 drops, and like 4 or 5 is about the end. It ends at like Sower of Revenge. I think that's the kind of deck this card strives to be in. Now the average case scenario is that it maybe gets 1 attack in and then dies. So it's done 7 damage total. Now the best case scenario I really believe is that it can get either 2 attacks in. If it gets 2 attacks in, that's 10 damage. Or you consume a card that has relevant synergies, such as the Ill-Fated Scholar. So a 4-drop that becomes it becomes a 5/4 that generates a 3/2. That's crazy tempo. So these cards are they need to be talked about with Ill-Fated Scholar. Now, if it actually consumes another card, like a Imbued Argonian, you're looking at a 6/5. Or if you consume any of the imbued creatures, probably Imbued Minotaur is a likely target and a desirable one, since you get 6/5 breakthrough. Now you're out of lightning bolt range, and Channeled Storm needs 2 empower triggers. So since they're probably going to be in the same deck, because they're both about doing the same thing, they sing the same song, I feel like that's another best case scenario. This eats that, and it gets 2 attacks in. But it's not a very versatile card, but it's good at what it does. Flame Spear Dragon. Okay, awesome, awesome. So sometimes, I should also say, although I said at night it seems to be control and in the morning aggro, I'm sensitive enough to register, okay, is, like, sometimes it changes, because we're dealing with living people, right? And a game's metagame changes, so people change to decks that they think that will win them games. So if they're playing certain decks, like for example, I was surprised last night that people were playing, they weren't just playing control decks, they were playing anti-control decks. They were playing Hollow Death Priests ×3 kind of deck. So that kind of annihilated my control deck, you can imagine. 3 Hollow Death Priests. So my deck isn't teched that hard to beat control decks that are anti-control decks. So then we realized, okay, maybe that's a great time to stop playing, because I don't think we have a good matchup against other people at other times. So why optimize against something that is only once in a blue moon? 4-drop Flame Spear Dragon 4/5. When your opponent summons a creature, Flame Spear Dragon aims at it. At the start of your turn, Flame Spear Dragon deals 1 damage to the creature it's aiming at. Talk about targeting. I actually think computer card games, once you know what are good cards, so like when you're building decks, you're trying to find good cards that synergize with each other, sometimes in subtle and non-obvious ways, and you put them in a deck, but you're trying to win via surprise or superior card quality and consistency over time. But there's a huge element of targeting people. So like if you think players are playing the X deck, you want to target them with whatever you think counters it. So knowing what counters what can be very helpful, because then you will be like, okay, I'm going to not play this deck right now because it's not countering the decks people are playing. Even though it's a good deck on its own and it's good at countering other types of decks that sometimes people play, right now people are playing this. Right now that, so I got reminded that because this card actually says target, it aims at this card. I judged this card very harshly when I first saw it. I think this card is actually a good card. First of all, 4 Magicka for 4/5 is absolutely playable. It's playable. 4 Magicka 5/5 is best in class, so what's one attack off? Especially since it has a ability that continually triggers, and it's basically doing 1 damage. It's done that 1 damage to something else. I was impressed by this month. A lot of players were playing good dragon decks. Maybe they finally collected them or whatnot, but Redoran and Guildsworn seem to have a home, and they all have red. All these dragon decks have red. I mean, not all of them. Not all of them. They usually have willpower because willpower has Kellen Granted. So Redoran and Guildsworn dragon decks will use this deck card. So he's already got a tough enough body to fight, and I think his ability is. It might seem lackluster at first until you pair it potentially with the other dragon, Glacial Dragon, because Glacial Dragon says shackle enemy creatures damaged by friendly dragons. Well, this card literally damages the last card that they played, and so it can be relevant because it can keep shackling cards every turn. I think this card also really shines when you have the other Dragon Scar, excuse me. So like Blade's Lookout is an amazing card. I think most of these dragon decks usually have red, mainly because actually of this card. Because this card is a 3/3 that says when you summon a card, dragon draw cards. So this card can easily draw people 3 cards. So this card played with the other. There's also another dragon kind of lookout on the side, Cliffside Lookout, also very good. I mean, a 2/5 is neat and all. It probably struggled because there weren't enough good dragons, but recently with more dragons, I've seen this thing become like 5/8 easily. It's really tough to deal with. He's like value trading and completely controlling lanes. Great hairdo, by the way. So I think when I think about these dragon decks, I think that while they may not be outstanding on their own, when they are put together with their other dragon synergistic cards, they can definitely be an interesting new control deck archetype, because they have these big bodies, but they also have they have card draw, they have the ability to trigger, they have end game, like they have Alduins, right? They actually have an Alduin, like they have cheap Alduins. They have Calgronted, very good card. So I think these dragon decks are not looking to end the game fast. They're looking to control the board, and this Flames Dragon can help do that. And even, let's say the worst case scenario, let's say he only triggers his ability once, because he always triggers his ability once and he doesn't shackle anything, and he immediately dies. Well, he's probably going to die in action. Like, he's dying defending you. He doesn't die, right? He's not a card that dies because he's attacking the opponent and they're removing it. I think he's a card that dies because he's trying to stall out for the late game dragons. So you're putting him in harm's way in some cases. And he's far weaker than Blood Dragon, for example, 5 drop. But the thing is, in some of these dragon decks, you're just looking for playable dragons. And Blood Dragon is not just playable, it's like best in class 5 drop, 5/7, hits cards in different lanes. This card is a lowered card, so it can help fill the 4 drop niche while being a dragon that, while not better than Blood Dragon, it is probably better than the other 4 drop dragons that were available, thereby making the dragon deck archetype stronger. If Calgronted hits the board, for example, he may not be the highest target. He may not. Sorry, Calgronted here says Halls of Colossus. Activate, summon a non-unique dragon from your deck. So this is a unique dragon because you can only have one of them. But this dragon is non-unique, so you can have multiple of them. So you can have 3 of them. Calgronted can be pulling these dragons. So this is another pool, but if you have other dragons to pull, you'll probably choose the more expensive ones. I think the average case scenario is this thing just takes out wards. Because deal 1 damage to enemy creature usually means it's not actually killing them, but it does set them up for things like Leaf Lurkers. It does set them up for removing wards. It does soften them up for Skaven Pyromancers and Cradle Crush Giants. Now, if they have wards, your opponents could theoretically play around it by playing the warded creature first and then playing another creature second. So it can be played around, so it's not perfect. But the average case scenario is usually your opponent ignores this card. If they're an aggro deck, they usually ignore this card and they force you to trade in, but it usually can take out, because of its 5 toughness, it survives many things, like even a Mournful Trader. So it usually can live to actually kill 2 things as a defensive card. Best case scenario is you're synergizing it with the Glacial Dragon, the Tiny Dragon, and you're just shackling them over and over again, and then you're setting up drain, and you get your opponent in a very frustrated situation where they can't chase this dragon down because you're protecting it with removal spells, and as much as they want to kill this thing, they actually need to kill the 3/3 card because that thing's drawing you cards. It's like, this card's kind of bait. You have the Blaze Lookout drawing you cards. Maybe you have the other dragon guy who gives you life. Maybe you have the other guy that's getting stronger, Cliffside Lookout. They want to remove this card because it's kind of hurting them and shackling them, but you already have other value engines. So the dragon deck has these kind of engine value generating cards. I don't have 3 of them, so I can't run the dragon deck, and that's actually the biggest problem probably with these dragon decks, is they actually aren't very, like, this card is not a very good card played in any deck but a dragon deck. Like, if you play this in another deck without the dragon synergy, I feel like there are better 4 drops, better options. But in the dragon archetype, it shines because of what the dragons kind of do with each other. Even a 4, like, if there's the draw, imagine if it's a 4 drop. If I told you this is called 4 drop, 4/5, draw a card every time and then it has its ability, you'd be like, wow, that card's amazing, considering drawing a card is valued at 3 magicka. So Merchant's Camel is basically draw a card at 4 magicka, and it's a 1/4, for example. This is a 4/5, and it draws a card. And so it's like sometimes you're a control deck and you're trying to look for options, and your aggressive players coming beating you down, and you feel bad because you put a 1/4 on the board, and you've got like a 4/4 and like a 3/3 and like Haunting Spirit and like a Complete Coast Troll. At least this thing fights back. The Merchant's Camel cannot fight back against other big threats, but it would draw you a card with that Blades Lookout. So I'm saying, as long as Blades Lookout's in the field, this card's objectively better than a Merchant's Camel. Oh, so the thing is, dragon decks can be, since these cards are not very good in non-dragon decks, and some of these dragons, like Undying Dragons, getting 3 of non-unique legendaries can be very difficult from a soul gem point of view. It's you're not going to see these decks played too often, I think, in part because they're not easy to craft. It's not easy to collect all the dragons to make it work. And I think even if you had all the dragons, you need to put in the time to get used to it and get practice at it. But I've definitely been seeing dragon decks at a high tier, and I've seen them played in Redoran, Guildsworn most effectively, and I think they're actually beating Alfiq decks. I think they are, because if they are not beating Alfiq decks, how can they be so high ranked? It's my conclusion. So craft with caution, largely because if you craft these cards, you're going, like, this is the kind of card that if you want it, you're going to get 3 of them. If you don't have 3 of them, they're probably not as good, right? And then if it's not just that, it's like all the other dragons, Undying Dragons, etc., etc. And that's actually where if you want to talk about one more synergy, let's say this card is a merchant. You draw a card with the Blaze Lookout. This guy's contesting the board and he's fighting back. He takes out 2 guys and he's causing damage. That's the dream Flame Spear Dragon. Let's say they're actually aggressing you and they're breaking the runes hard enough. Well, that becomes an additional source of card draw. So in the right colors with Willpower, you run Prophecies and you run board clears. You have Ice Storms, etc., etc. So instead of panicking and saying, "Oh, I'm losing health, I'm dead," you lose health and you recover and use the additional card resources to get control back of the board. And then you plop down things like Undying Dragons to just wipe out the opponent's game plan if they're an aggro deck. Now, as a control deck, I'm not exactly sure how these dragon decks pan out as against other control decks. I think it's a skill-based matchup. So, like, if it's Guildsworn Rage versus Dragon, I'm not sure who actually wins. I'm sure that the dragon deck needs to be careful and needs to know when to end the game, and needs to be very careful on like card value and card generation. But I'm not playing the dragon deck, so I'm not sure how good their win rate is against other control decks. 4-drop War-Hardened Senche, Khajiit, Wax, +1/+1, Wayne, battle an enemy creature. So it's a cat riding a cat. I would kind of want to watch a movie where this thing's fighting, but it looks like he's holding a shovel. Like I know there's the weapons. There's a spear on top, but it looks like he's holding a shovel. Just like, imagine a guy riding a saber-toothed cat with a shovel as his weapon. But this cat that he's riding looks like this is the, I want to see this in a movie, just like going ham. So Wax, +1/+1, Wayne, battle an enemy creature. So played on curve, it's Wayne, because Wayne's even, Wax is odd, 4 magicka is even if you don't have the ring. So if you play him on even, you can remove a creature. I think that's his best use case scenario. His best use is to battle a 2-attack creature, to survive that creature, and to survive to fight and take out another body. I think that's the superior thing. Now, if you have the Moongate, so we'll talk worst case scenario, you basically get the one you don't want, or you only get one of them. Worst case scenario, it's 4 Magicka for 5/4, which is worse than the Dragon Knight if you're being aggressive, but potentially better if you have things like Rebellion General to re-trigger it. Although Archer Wax Wayne is something I've not seen. So battle an enemy creature is probably more relevant than being 5/4. The average case scenario, like the middling case scenario, is when you, or what you want to get is like Moongate. So like if you have Moongate and you activate this, it's a 5/4 that battles things, and now you can start eating things with 3 toughness, and I think that is a huge tempo swing. Developing a 5/4 that takes out a 3 attack creature, huge. But are there other red Wax and Wayne cards that make it more meaningful than the Monk? So far we have only seen one, so I can't say yet that's affirmative. Okay. Now let's say the best case scenario is you get a Rebellion General. So you use Moongate, you get a Rebellion General. So Moongate says it's a 5/4, he battles and kills a guy. You Rebellion General, he becomes a 6/2 and battles another one. I'm assuming you killed a 3 toughness creature and went to 1 HP, so re-triggering the Rebellion General means that you go from 5 attack to 6 and 1 life to 2 life. So he's probably going to die if he battles another creature, unless it has a 1 attack. But you'd probably use it as a removal. So this card's other counterpart in the Wax Wayne is the Pouncing Senshi. I've lost 1 time to this card. It was used by Turquoise Link. He used Moongate, and he charged me with a 7/7. I think that's actually pretty doable. Like, this is like a 7/7 charge with Moongate. It's possible. So the cat without the rider is stronger than the cat with the rider. Interesting. I wonder what he did with the rider. I know they're different cats, but it's like they're similar enough that one must wonder. They're like the same type of cat. So using this in Archer is kind of funkier because Monk seems to have the more natural synergy. Assassin also has Wax and Wayne. I think this is fairly unexplored territory. Wax and Wayne, red, and using Rebellion. So, not sure. Like, this and this are huge tempo swings. They can take people hugely off guard because people don't play them. And that comes back to the element of surprise. If people don't know what you're playing, you can make big plays. So I think when you play these kind of cards, they're good enough that the challenge is to take the card and get maximum value. You want to get, when you play this card, you want to get value from the card, squeeze as much of it, more than you could get from a normal 4-drop. That's when this card justifies itself being in the deck. I feel like it's actually playable without the Moongate. It's a little lackluster though. But the surprise factor could be powerful, and the ability to re-trigger it with Rebellion General makes it interesting. I'm not sure where it fits. Like, is this a control card? Is this an aggressive card? Because the battling nature makes it kind of like a tempo card, more like a Leaf Lurker. It's like a Leaf Lurker kind of card. Leaf Lurker can be used in aggressive lists, and it can be used in control-oriented decks as well. It's unfortunately not as final as Leaf Lurker because this has a limit to what it can actually take out. Leaf Lurker can take out warded creatures when you pair it with Curse, so that's its downside. I think Murkwater Scourge is objectively better than this card right now. because it's easier to get the max value from the Murkwater Scourge. Like Leaf Lurker can use Murkwater Scourge's first curse or second curse. You can use the first curse to remove a target, right? But this card just screams aggressive. Like, I feel like this Pouncing Sensei, if you actually wanted to play this card, you're doing it for 7/7 charge. You're not doing it for a guard. Which is a little unfortunate, because when it comes to cards like this, you pay for what you get. 7 Magicka, in that cost, guard is, you're paying for it. So I'd rather it be cheaper with no guard, right? That's when, like, if this was a 6 cost or 5 cost, now we're talking, like, throw away the guard and I'm more interested in this kitty. Blast Bones, Skeleton, 5-drop, 3/1, charge, Last Grasp, deal 1 damage to all creatures in this lane. I'm not a fan of its artwork. You're right, I think so. Trading into a 2/4 would be max value. Although 2/4 is not the most common stat line. But that sounds right to me. But it's also subjective. Max value is also relative to what your opponent's playing, right? A battle an enemy creature, you don't even need it. It doesn't even need to be a 2/4. It could be a 2/5, for example, and you have another creature that just does 1 more damage or something. That's breakthrough. Like, maybe another breakthrough creature can get through it, and it just can't get through it. It can't kill it without the battling help. That's might be a really awkward, like a Hive Defender, for example. Like, if you're able to Moongate it, if you're able to Moongate this, and it will survive the Hive Defender and bring Hive Defender down to 1, basically. Blast Bones, charge, Last Grasp, deal 1 damage to all creatures in this lane. Cliff Racer is a 4 attack charge creature. The Last Grasp of this says that you're trying to run into a target and deal 4 damage to that target, and then deal 1 damage to all the other targets. It's a very unusual card. It could surprise people. Could be game-winning with proper setup. Although I'm much more conservative when it comes to these kind of removal. I would rather stack my deck with Ice Storms as Cradle Crush Giants. Like, Cradle Crush Giants deal 2 damage to the whole lane. I can imagine this card just blowing people out, though, as a one-of. Like, and some of these cards should be one-ofs. Like, they're surprising tech choices. But for what it does, it's, even though it's a surprise and it could blow people out, it's pretty expensive. It's on the expensive side. Like, you'd rather this be a cheaper card that had less attack and had the same abilities. Like, if this was 3 Magicka, 1/1, charge, Last Grasp, deal 1 damage to all creatures in this lane, you just watch people stack their decks with 3 of these. The things like... So, and my concern is, it's not really coming down early enough to really deal with 1 toughness creatures. So if you're not dealing with 1 toughness creatures, you're kind of... You either need more setup. It's like you need a Skaven Pyromancer and a Blast Bones. Why? That's 8 Magicka. Why not just use Cradle Crush? I think it's overcosted. It's very overcosted. So worst case scenario is you have to remove your opponent's card, and it's only 1 card. So they have a 3 toughness creature, like a Corner Club Gambler in the field lane, and you just use Blast Bones and you just charge in. So you traded a 5-cost card for a 3-cost card. There's no way Blast Bones survives contact. And if Blast Bones goes face, that means it's deal 1 damage to all creatures in its enemy's lane. Could be nullified. Sorcerer's Negation is run 3 of in every sorcerer-based deck. Almost every sorcerer-based deck, right? Earthbone Spinner, very common card. Halalu Sharpshooter. So, like, if you really dared to take the risk of going face and saying, ha ha ha, I'm gonna blow up later, so it doesn't matter. The Halalu Sharpshooter, you probably just lost the game, because you left the board up, and then they silenced and destroyed your 5-drop, and you potentially gave them even a card off the Rune Break, so now your tempo swing is huge, in a very bad way. So mediocre values, I feel like, okay, there's a 1 toughness creature and there's a 3 toughness creature, and you just ran into the 3 toughness creature and you killed both of them. I feel like red already has rapid shots. It already has pyromancers. And Skaven Pyromancer just does the same thing as this card. It's just so much cheaper. It comes down earlier. It can blow out the game even faster versus go wide decks that are weak against the one toughness removal. And in the case where you actually ran into that 3 toughness creature and killed the 1 toughness creature, it's kind of break even. So it's like you kind of. I mean, we should recognize this could actually kill a 4 toughness creature. To be fair. If you ran into a 3 toughness creature and it had 1 more life, Blast Bones would then blow up and the 1 more damage would apply to both the creatures. So there's that. So it can clear 4 toughness creatures. So it is possible that this could get mediocre and a decent value. I think best case scenario is your opponent just doesn't have any idea you're playing this card, which basically is everybody. No one has any idea you'd run this card. If you put this card 1 up, no one would ever play around this card. They might play around Skaven though and Cradle Crusher. So that's to be fair. Like when I say no one will play around this card, people do expect Skaven Pyromancer, so they won't be stacking these 1 toughness creatures in a lane for you to just annihilate. But let's pretend, for some reason, they don't respect Skaven Pyromancer. Blast Bones max values when he trades and like clears. But it's such a conditional and such low probability situation, especially at higher skill levels, because people already are aware of cards that do similar things. So I think this is a kind of card that you have to challenge. It's a challenge card. This is a card that if you put in your deck, you're kind of putting yourself at a handicap. You're like challenging. I'm trying to win with Blast Bones. I'm trying to get value from Blast Bones. And it's possible for a Blast Bones to be good in a specific... Like, wow, that was an amazing Blast Bones. But is Blast Bones amazing himself? Probably not. It's just like you were able to make something awesome happen out of a card that is a little lackluster and expensive. Senche Noble, 6-drop, 7/4 Khajiit Guard. I'm actually really interested in what his voice sounds like. Or her voice sounds like. Oh, let me see. Oh, I heard that Blast Bones has an amazing animation when he blows up. Oh yeah, we could talk about that game another time. We could talk about Gwen another time. Senche Noble, 7/4 guard, 6-drop. Hive Defender has more toughness. There are 3 drops with 4 attack. This thing doesn't trade well at all. This thing is weird in the sense that it's probably like super good in Singleton, or sorry, it's pretty good in Arena, but it's like in Constructed, hard removal, Territorial Vipers, Javelins, Edicts. There are 3 attack. There are 3, like an Undie Clan Sorcerer could kill this thing, and I think that makes me very concerned because when I play my guards, I want to be safe, and a 7/4 guard doesn't make me feel very safe. And as I said, you pay for what you get, so a 7/4 with guard would be cheap. If you want the 7/4 part, you can get those stat line at a cheaper cost, probably. I think. Although that is kind of it's a rare stat line. Like 7/4 is very... It's actually the same stats as a 5/6, which actually makes this very bad. Now that I see it. 7/4, if you've switched over the 2 to the 5/6, that means a 5-drop Phallic Exemplar is 100% better than this because it's cheaper, 1, has the same stat line, 2. They trade, 3, and it actually has an ability. When it breaks prophecies, you get a free guard. So, I think Senche Noble's best case scenario is in Arena. And in Constructed, I think this is unplayable card. There's no natural synergies with it. There's no effects or anything like that, so there's nothing that makes it good. It's like its worst case scenario is that it gets traded into by a 3-drop or killed by a 3-drop Channeled Storm and powered once. It's too easy to kill it. it's mediocre case scenario is you actually hit them in the face. It lived long enough to hit them in the face, at which point one must wonder, why do you want the guard anyway? Because if you're trying to hit them with a 7-4, maybe you need to hide it in the shadow lane. If they have a guard in the field lane, if it has guard and you go in the shadow lane, then you can be traded into with Threshold Viper. So the guard can be a liability. Best case scenario is it gets an attack in, and then it gets another attack in, and then somehow your opponent tries to remove it, but they only have 3 attack creatures, and then it gets another attack in. So he does 21 damage because he attacks 3 times. The probability of that happening is ridiculously low, because he would have cracked so many runes, you're giving them more options to find an answer. You might hit a prophecy. So I think the best case scenario is this guy even connects once. Like, I actually find it difficult for this guy to actually connect a single time. There are just too many good 6-drops. And the stat line's actually not that special, because if you think about it, Night Shadow is a 6/5, which is the same stat line at 6. Drain and Breakthrough. That's 2 keywords. This one only has 1. So Night Shadow has 2 keywords and has the same stat lines. And Drain is much more powerful than Guard, in my opinion. Because Drain can be made use of with Squish the Wimpy. You could actually use the Drain the same turn you played it. The Guard doesn't do anything. It does nothing on your turn. It only does things on their turn. Okay, we gotta refill our tea. The final 3 cards. Yeah, Lightning Bolt, bam, as well. Like, doesn't feel good. Okay, I'm back. And talking about that previous card, I think it's important to note that there are good cards, like let's say Iron Atronach. Iron Atronach, I believe, is the card. Iron Atronach is an example of a similar card in the sense that it has a bunch of things about it, but there's a point where too much attack is like, okay, like, you don't actually need 12 attack on a single creature. Like, that means it kills pretty much everything. So, like, there comes a certain point where your attack doesn't make a very big difference. And, like, 7 attack and 5 attack, between 5 and 7 attack, honestly, I think they're very similar. So when you're playing a card, knowing what you want in a card is important, because sometimes you're trying to build a deck and you're like, I'm looking for guards, and you look at this card and you think to yourself, well, this card has 7 attack, that's a good thing. But even if it had 5 attack, it's the same thing. In fact, the toughness becomes more relevant if you're looking for a guard that's actually going to stop. Because, like, okay, if they have 3 creatures in front of the Sentry Noble, you don't play guards in front of lanes that have nothing, unless you're guarding both lanes and you're trying to not die. But I'm saying, usually you play guards in front of creatures that actually have attack. And if this has a 4 toughness, it means only one of them probably needs to kill it. But if it has 7 toughness, it could potentially stop 2 or even 3 creatures. Because even 2 4 attack creatures, if they swap the 4/7 around, two 4-attack creatures would have to trade and die for the Sentient Noble to be removed. And I think that's far better than, like, okay, Sentient Noble does 7 damage to one guy and dies, or he does 4 damage to 2 guys and he dies, but he kills both of them. This is the same thing. Like, there's no overkill. You don't get more points for dealing 3 more damage to a guy that has 4 toughness. So if this was 4, it's just as good with first 4 toughness creatures. That's what I'm trying to get at. Sentient Rot Grave Prowler. Khajiit 5/5. Pilfer, consume a creature to gain power and health equal to the consumed creature. I wonder if this and Ream and Siege works could be used together. Ream and Siege weapons and this, because it has the Pilfer ability, and being able to, the ability itself is very powerful. But in a removal heavy world, so we're in a removal heavy world. So let's go to the spectrum. From a control side, removal very heavy. From a mid-range standpoint, 6-drop is Alfiq Conjurer, so they're very fast and they're threatening up to 10 damage the next turn. It's possible to get the Storm Atronach online the very turn you play the first Conjurer, the turn 6. So if you played a card like this and you didn't Pilfer, what if they just Javelin you, or what if they just Belligerent Giant you, or what if you buffed yourself once, so you got 5 damage in and now you're like a 10-10, but then they Belligerent Giant you're 10-10, so he has to reset and start over. Whereas their Alfiq Conjurer split into 2 bodies, so if they Belligerent Giant one of them, the other one sticks. So I think there is a vulnerability to single target-ness to this. Also, versus fast decks, this card is too slow. It's versus those decks that are like, its ability basically screams, I can value trade you all day, but wait a minute, I can't value trade you yet. I need to go Pilfer something. So like, in order for it to trigger its ability, let's say there's an enemy, a creature in front of it, it has to ignore that creature and attack face for it to actually activate its ability. And that's kind of relevant because you can get 5/5 at 4 Magicka. So if you're looking for 5/5 to trade into stuff, 6-drop's not doing it. So I think the ability is very strong, but in the current metagame, he's just too slow to outrace the fast guys. In the mid-game, he's too vulnerable, and he's not really contesting Alfiq Conjurer. Like, even though you have a buff creature, a single lethal ping can take you out. A single guard can stop you because you don't have breakthrough. But I guess this card you could say, well, I consumed a Minotaur. So if you consumed a Minotaur, you actually get 5/2, right? So this actually becomes a 10/7. 11/8 with breakthrough if this card consumes this Minotaur. So that's the best card in red. We can see already that's consumable. If it consumes the Ill-Fated Scholar, it's an 8/7. Generates a 3/2. So it has some ability. For it to really get Super Jack, you're trying to consume cards that are even bigger than 6 cost, but that makes it too slow, right? Consuming an Odaving, you become 15/15, but that means there's an Odaving in your grave. How did it get there? It's 12 Magicka. If you played it, wait to play the Odaving, that's a problem. So I think in the worst case scenario, you play this card flat, your opponent's outracing you in the aggro matchup, and you need a value trade. So it's as if you had just a 5/5, because you're not pilfering. In the mid-range matchup, you're running into a Storm Atronach, Alfiq at 6, and you're forced to trade in 3/4 to 7, or depends who goes first, but maybe you get a trade into the 3/4, but the 7/5 sticks, goes to your face, and they Belligerent Giant this thing. It's like, what do? You can't play this card again. Like, they have 2 7-attack creatures on board going face next turn. This doesn't have a guard. You'd rather even play Mr. Sentient Noble at that stage, as sad as it sounds, because Belligerent Giant's going to eat him up and send 3 damage upstairs with breakthrough. Against the control matchup, this kitty is just like my Ebonheart Slay deck would be like, yes, he didn't play 2 cards. It's only going to take 1 crossbow. Like, that's what we're thinking. We're thinking, it's turn 6, what's he going to play? Is he going to play like 4 creatures, so I have to really have to work hard to remove all of them? Or it's 1 big fat creature that is just 1 crossbow, 1 lethal creature, easy days. And I think Tribunal and other hard removal decks are also looking at that way and like, oh, he only played 1 target? Nice. Javelin. We got 1 turn closer to our red year. We got 1 more turn closer to our Unstoppable Rage. But you have to remember the first attack, even if the Mundus Stone gets charged, is only 5 damage. So he gets the consume after it. So he's still vulnerable to the single target. He's still vulnerable to Belligerent Giant. And if you played a Mundus Stone before this, your matchup versus the aggro decks is certainly going downhill. So I think the best case scenario with this deck is somehow you're able to cheat the Pilfer. Somehow you have good consume cards to consume in the grave, and you're able to Pilfer this before its first attack. Riemann Siege Weapons is an example of that, because this actually deals 1 damage from the creature, so then this card would get the Pilfer. That's one example of cheating it. It is not something I've tested, and it's definitely something that is certainly going to be on the edge, but not having charge also feels kind of bad. And imagine though if it said consume a creature to gain health and power and health equal to the consumed creatures and its keywords. All of a sudden, it's still not going to be played that often, but all of a sudden it could get charged.
You want to go shopping?
Sorry, continuing. So, I feel like this card is a card that's very difficult to get max value out of. I think getting the Pilfer off, there are tools that can do it, but they're a little awkward and they're a little clunky in the current metagame. And I do agree with that statement. In this metagame, if a card doesn't actually do something for you the moment it's hitting the ground, it better have something else working in its favor. Too many conditionals make the card increasingly more risky. Pouncing Sensei, 7-drop, 4/7, guard, wax, Wayne. Worst case scenario, you play it on curve, it's a 4/7 guard. And you wonder, why am I not playing Dark Seducer? 7/7 drain, guard on both turns, 8 Magicka. Played off curve, because Wayne's even, so it actually turn 8 that it's a charge, 4/7. And I feel like 4 damage charge with guard is kind of bad, because Cliff Racer's 5 Magicka for 4. And if you have green, Razumdar's my boy. He draws you 2 cards and he has charge at 4. So I think Razumdar is better. Now the middling case scenario is when you have Moongate and you trigger Wax and Wayne. I think that's a pretty good 7/7 charge changes the story. 7/7 is different than 4, and it could close out the game. It's certainly a surprise play. It's the main competition, as we said over and over again, is the Wax Wayne seems to favor green. So it seems like because of the Rebellion General, Archer is the one that gets Wax and Wayne max value, but Monk seems to be the king of the Wax and Wayne at the moment. So it's hard to say is Archer really better, because the Wax Wayne on the Monk is quite, because of Queen's Captain. Queen's Captain draw 2 cards, destroy a card, and the green card draw a card, and the multiplying Elfic Illusionist. Pouncing Sensei, the red Wax Wayne package is definitely harder to pull off. It definitely requires like game planning, and to win with these cards it's not easy. It's not straightforward. That's what I would say. The best case scenario is you're able to Rebellion General. If you Rebellion General and Moongate, it becomes, unfortunately Wayne is, you can't get charged twice, so it becomes a 10/7 charge. But that's 11 Magicka. But 11 Magicka deal 10 damage to face. It might sound good, but honestly, it's not that much more. It's not that much more damage. And this thing getting it isn't, like, the problem with this guy is his stat lines and his abilities do not help him survive long enough for Rebellion General to even survive, to do anything. So if you're able to get a Pouncing Sensei and a War Hardened Sensei and a Rebellion General on, that is that is some survival skills, because this card is, if you battle the 2 attack creature, he's at 1 life. Like, how long can he possibly survive? Your opponent, even if their control deck starts putting Thief Guild recruits in front of them. Also, in the aggro matchup, a 7-drop is kind of a dead card. So, like, if you put too many of these, like, the thing is, if you wanted your deck to be, I'm going to kill you Pounding Sencheis, you're like, I want 3 of them. But if you put 3 of them, you're bricking yourself and you're actually weakening your late game potential. So it doesn't seem to curve out very nicely. Like, the 4-drop Waxwayne into the 7-drop Waxwayne and Rebellion General 4-drop, this is very unnatural. It's very unnatural. And if for this deck archetype to work better with red, they're going to need more cards that synergize with Waxwayne, I would say. Alright, our final card. Thanks for watching this far. This is our final card, and hopefully we can give it our best shot. Mulamner. Dragon, 9-drop, 9/8. Summon and slay. Battle an enemy creature with less power than Mulamner's health. I called it Mulamner over and over again. I think that's easier to say, but Mulamner. So this card has an OTK combo, if you're not aware. There's a card called Berserker of the Pale. It's a 3-drop. Berserker of the Pale is actually a very good card. Berserker of the Pale, 4-drop, 3-drop, 4/2. When you summon a creature with 5 power or more, give it +1/+1 and breakthrough. So it has serviceable body. 4/2 for a 3-drop is fine. And when you play it with Mulamner, you can play them on the same turn because that's 12 Magicka. 3 Magicka and 9, that's 12. You play the Berserker of the Pale, and then you play Mulamner. It's a 10/9. The 10/9 with breakthrough. Every time it battles, so the first time it summons, it battles an enemy creature with less than 9 toughness, and it will deal 9 damage to them. And a remainder that whatever kills them kills the creature, and whatever breaks through over goes to the enemy's face. Then its slay ability, since it just killed a creature, it battles again, and it does damage again to their face. So this has the ability to attack them potentially like 4 times. So with Berserker of the Pale, you play Mulamner. It kills a guy, does damage to them, kills another guy, does damage to them, kills a guy, does damage to them. Each and every time, though, the toughness gets reduced. The next target has to have less power than Mulamner's health. So Mulamner is not willing to die from his own ability, which I think this is a nice card from a design point of view. So that means the first creature it battles can't have 7 attack. It can't have 8 attack because he would have 9 defense when he's buffed by Berserker of the Pale. So 8 toughness, 8 attack creatures could be targeted. But generally speaking, you're trying to target small guys like Thieves Guild recruits and add it up so you can do lethal. So if you did some damage to them before Mulamner came in, Mulamner can kind of be the finisher. So I think that's a combo that works very well. It seems to be best positioned in Archer because Archer has card draw, could find it, and Archer also has good survival tools like Murkwater Scourge, Leaf Lurkers, Finish Offs, Fighters Guild recruits, crossbows, Sanctuary Pets, Shadow Shifts. It can kind of, and it has good deck thinning, so that deck can basically survive long enough to find those 2 cards together. Since you can run multiple Berserkers of the Pale, since they're actually not too bad, even if they don't buff anything, then you can just wait till you have Mulamner and 1 Berserker of the Pale in hand, then play them together to finish off your opponent. So if you're not aware of that, hopefully that was insightful. Mulamner, I think he's a good and playable card. Like a 9-drop that removes multiple cards. Like I should actually consider putting this in my Slay deck. Because it does the exact opposite of what Sentry Graveprowler does. Like this doesn't do anything the moment it hits. This thing can remove like three things. So it can remove, let's say 3 toughness creatures, 3 attack creatures. It can remove 1 3 attack creature, it goes to 5. It can then remove a 4 attack creature and then go to 1. So it can remove a 3 attack and then a 4 attack creature. So it can, without the Berserker of the Pale, it can actually remove any combination of 7 attack. So if there were 7 1-attack creatures, it could remove all 7 of them. If you have Berserker of the Pale, it can remove 8. So that means it can remove 2 4-attack creatures, or 1 5-attack creature and 1 3-attack creature, yet still survive. It's also worth noting that Archer deck that could run this can also have alternate win conditions in the form of Unstoppable Rage and Vigilant Giants or Belligerent Giants, either way. Cradle Crush Giants as well could also help that deck survive. It's kind of a control deck, kind of Rage Archer. I used to play this in my Slay deck, so I just took it out a long time ago, but when we look back, it's not that the 9/8 body is actually kind of useful, and like Red Brahmin's playable. So if we threw out Razandar or Zumog Foom, we could put Mulamner and just use him as a hard removal card. A hard removal card that threatens a body. So the worst case scenario, I think, for this card is they only have lethal creatures on the board, so he immediately dies, and you don't have any Berserker of the Pale combo. I might have been muted. Was I talking muted? Oh no. Hopefully not. Mulamner. I think, so the worst case scenario with this card is not too bad. It's either you're not able to survive to get to this card, or when you do play it, you're removing... It's funny because if you're in a dangerous situation where they're threatening lethal, this could potentially just remove a very tall creature. Like a 7-attack creature could be removed with Mulamner while developing a massive threat. I feel like the downside of this card is not too bad. Like, this card is, if played, he's removing something. And if he already got value, so if they hard remove him, you don't feel bad at all. It's like, oh, I just killed 2 of your creatures. You javelin me? Fine, that's fine. Fine. So the worst case scenario for this card is looking pretty decent. I think the mid case scenario is like, you're able to remove lethal from the board and set up lethal for yourself. Like, you're able to actually have a massive swing turn. And I think that's very doable with this card as long as you can survive to it. So I don't think this card's too hard to activate. That also goes back to how good some cards are, is how easy is it to get maximum value. This card is very easy to get max value. And I think the best case scenario is the Berserker of the Pale combo we've just mentioned, is when you've survived a 12 Magicka, you have Berserker of the Pale on the board, you wait till your opponent puts down too many small creatures, you chip them down low enough, they die the same. When you have 12 Magicka, you play Berserker of the Pale, you play Mulamner, and you're able to do 30 damage to them. Let's run through that. If they, let's say you battle three creatures, 3 2-toughness creatures. 3 2-toughness creatures would actually do 24 damage to them, because Mulamner he would be buffed up to 10 from the Berserker of the Pale +1/+1 and breakthrough. So 3 2-toughness creatures would represent 8 damage breaking through to the opponent's face. So that's 24 damage. So if you factor in 1 toughness creatures, 3 1-toughness creatures, you're doing 27 damage to them in a single turn. So if you were able, you could actually set that up with Curses, Murkwater Scourges, and set up 1-toughness creatures and sort of leave small bodies on the board and ignore them just so Mulamner can eat them up and go face. Now, I think if Prophecies get triggered, you will die. Like, if Javelin comes out, I'm pretty sure it will kill the Mulamner. So there's that. And unfortunately for Archer, they'd have no Soul Tears or Recursion abilities, so let's say if that happens, then you're going to have to go on win condition 2. But these decks usually run Tazcat, and it's because Tazcat has breakthrough and Tazcat has charge, so it's not like it's all over. So overall, I think this card's amazing, and I should actually try putting it in my Ebonheart deck. And it also fits. I didn't mention it. It's a great dragon that fits in all the dragon decks, right? Because the dragon decks just want more dragons. So let's go real quick. Good, bad, good, bad, good, bad. And then we'll end stream and have a good, delicious dinner. Bad. Devouring Flame, bad. Fear Totem, good. Prowl Smuggler, good. Uraxian Berserker, it can be good, but it takes setup. Imbued Minotaur, good. Enraged Dragon Knight, good. War-Hardened Senche, bad. Blastbones, bad. Senche Noble, bad. Senche Grave Prowler, bad. Pouncing Senche, bad. Mulamner, good. So I think red seems to have one of the weaker sets, but some of their cards, like Wax and Wane wise, not very good. Consume wise, 2 good cards. Then you got some trash, and then you've got Mulamner and the other dragon. But we also mixed out Riemann Siege Weapons. I think it's bad. Flame Spear Dragon, I think it's good. It's not very good, and it's not good in non-dragon decks, but with the right synergies, it's possible to get amazing value from it. Ooh, I really like how the cards glow blue. I didn't notice that. They glow blue when you highlight it. That's a cool touch. I wonder if that's new. So thanks guys for hearing us out. We are going to stop and we're going to save and download, and we're going to post it on YouTube. If you're watching one of our set reviews, just know that we did it in order. So if you wanted to skip to any card, you could. So you basically know, oh, if you skip to a random time point and it's at Enraged Dragon Knight, you'll be like, oh, well, towards the end, Mulamner is going to show up. Thanks for that comment. We could probably discuss it. And I'm always open to being wrong, right? Like, this is just how I feel or how I think about these cards now. Some of these cards can become much better as new cards are added that can potentially synergize with them, especially the Wax and Wanes. Riemann Siege Weapons is definitely a card that it's, I guess, I think it's a card, when I say it's bad, I think it's very hard to get good value from it. It's possible for it to become good in certain games situationally, but overall, it's very, I think, like for example, because support removal is heavy in certain decks, when it works really well. But when it's removed, if your deck was too reliant on this, you're going to be in a lot of trouble. All right, thanks guys. Have a good evening, and I'm going to have an amazing dinner.